I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving and I hope you guys had an even better weekend, but that doesn't mean that the week isn't going to start and we need to get some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and NVIDIA. So we're going to go over everything today. We're going to point out some things for the week ahead that could possibly form. And the first thing is we do have those weekly ranges set up for you here. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing on the SPY that I wanted to point out was just the fact that we are pretty far away from every single moving average at this point. You can see even the 9-day moving average is kind of towards the bottom of our weekly range. These are the updated weekly ranges for the week ahead. And what I overall also wanted to point out was this bar here actually did not fill the last open gap here. We're about 10 cents short of filling this gap, right? So we want to pay attention to that going into Monday as we do look at the shorter time frames. But the levels that I have marked off for you, I've marked them off on every single chart, so we're going to go over those. We are outside of that monthly range, which means we do have that 68% chance to come all the way back down into that range. Now, the fact that we do not have much time on our side would mean we need some drastic sell-off to get there. So I'm not necessarily leaning towards this all going in one full swoop this week, but it's something to pay attention to because we are closing outside of that range. If we do close outside of that range, that will mean that a lot of the options market was thrown off by this big push here. The overall levels that I'm paying attention to on the SPY are these zones here with these gaps, and they actually line up very well with liquidity, okay? So we could see bottoming out for some kind of lower or higher low at this point around one of these gaps, in my opinion, okay? So we really want to pay attention to these. You can see that we're in confluence with some liquidity with this one right here, but I am also leaning towards an even deeper push down that could come all the way down to this price point of about 422. And you'll notice 422, we've actually held up from that area right here. We saw that big bounce from that area. And if we just look kind of across, you'll notice we actually gapped above that area previously and then kind of used it as support to go higher. So I do believe this is a very good support level for SPY. And if we do see this curl down, then we will see that daily MACD actually roll over. And if it doesn't exceed this low here, we don't have to pay attention to divergence. All we have to really pay attention to is if this does roll over pretty quickly and then comes back up in the next few weeks, then we will be in positive territory and you're most likely going to see another push higher to take out this high. So we really want to pay attention to that. As of right now, it really looks like we're setting up some kind of new trend at this point. You know, like this one here, we have a high, we're going into another high. So we look like we're starting an uptrend. And I do believe that if the Fed does decide to pivot and hint that they are in the first quarter of 2024 going to possibly reduce those rate hikes, right? They're going to flip the script and start to pull those back down, then we can see some real bullishness come in the market and see an extension of this move all the way up into this recent, this channel here that we've been in. So we could actually see this channel get touched in the near future, and maybe we do come all the way up into areas of, I have about 479 marked on my chart. Okay, so going down into the SPY on an hourly chart, we're noticing these divergences across the way here. And overall, what we've been saying on the hourly here is in order to start that negative trend, we're going to need to cross this center line right here, because right now we are in positive territory. We need this to start a negative trend by going into this negative territory. If we keep remaining in this positive territory, then you might see a further squeeze. So if we do see a move like this, we can pay attention to the top side of that range. And actually, we did leave a gap behind, and it's like literally right above that bar right there. So it's right above there. We're like 10 cents off from hitting it, right? So we want this to possibly even go fill that gap before actually breaking down. And it looks like if we do get some kind of curl up and even into that, top of the weekly here, we actually could see this curl up one more time and give us a very, very solid triple divergence across the board. We could consider this a divergence at this point, but right now you can see that the structure of these, it looks like if we did get one more push higher, we could get a very, very clear triple or quadruple divergence if you want to consider that. Qs, we've officially filled every gap, right? We've come above this high. We've made a new high, which is a very good sign that we are still in a overall bullish trend here. So this could have, all this turmoil here could have just been some consolidation to break out and head higher. And at this point, we could measure this out. But overall, I'm just paying attention to this wedging that we're in, right? We're starting to wedge at this point, and I would expect that if we do see some kind of pullback, we might actually get that trend extension down at lower levels to head all the way up into this. And as you can see, this red line here is a little bit bigger than this one. So I do believe the second move will be bigger, but at this point, I want you to get some places to pay attention to. If we do see it curl back down, you notice that we are outside of the monthly expected move. We have a 68% chance to land back within it, but we only have 4 days to pull that off. So time might be against you on that one. But we really want to pay attention to this. We want to see if we are able to hold up at certain levels. The levels that I'm mainly paying attention to, really, I'm actually paying attention to the monthly expected move, the top of that, because we can use that as support, right? So if we do see a dramatic drop, we could see that used as support. But the main area I'm paying attention to is this gap right here, right around 356. Okay, right around 356, you're going to pull that across. You're just going to notice there's a bunch of times we use this area as support, right? So we use this area as support and we have good liquidity in there. Could mean this is where buyers are going to be lurking if we do get some good news, possibly from the Fed mid-December. Now, in the bullish side of the hourly chart on the Qs, I'm overall just paying attention to that weekly expected move. Okay, the weekly expected move up here could be a point of reference for us to pay attention to, and maybe we are able to, because we are still in positive territory on the hourly, see one more little curl up of this MACD to give us a little bit more bullishness into this, early on in this week. It's just something that I want to pay attention to, but really it could go either way at this point. I believe that we are going to start to see that negative trend come to fruition this week, but we need to cross that center line for that to really begin. So we will need some kind of sell-off. Now, if we do break down to the bottom side pretty quickly early on in the week, this could be the reversal signaling, and we could see a more drastic move if we get outside of that. But if we do get outside of that and we start to see shorter time frames giving us some kind of 15-minute divergence, there is that good chance that we actually pop back into it, 68% of the time by the end of the week. So it's just we want to pay attention to both sides of the coin here, okay? We want to pay attention to both sides of the coin, but maybe as we look at some other stocks, we can get a little better idea of what could happen this week. Apple overall, we did fill this gap. That's a good thing. But the point of this being is we've seen dramatic sell-offs from this area, right? We've seen dramatic sell-offs from this zone. So the fact that we're closing back within that zone at the end of the week may not be the best sign. Now, we do still have this gap all the way up here at around 195.50 that we could go fill. But if we did fill that early on in the week, we would be outside of this expected move. So I actually did give the expected move for Apple. That way you guys could see it on one of the stocks, and you can get this for all the stocks that we cover on this channel down in the description of this video. It's just a Patreon, and you can get those every single week from me. Overall on Apple, I just wanted to point out this 30-minute divergence here. Okay, we have 30-minute divergence across the board. You're going to see a ton of them when volatility starts to subside and we're in this short squeeze. So you're going to see a ton of them. Don't let them fake you out, all right? You want volatility to be a little bit higher for these to play out a little bit quicker. But if volatility is low, you can see we can make a ton of them. We can make a ton of them. So when this happens, you really want to pay attention to when it actually goes into negative territory. And that actually happened on Friday. That happened on Friday. We got into negative territory on a 30-minute, and you can see that we bought ourselves some time. So if we actually see this curl up early on in the week, we will go back into positive territory, and maybe this trend actually continues. Maybe we go and target that gap somewhere around 195.50. That would take us outside of our expected move for the week, right? The top side of that range. And overall, we want to pay attention to if we do see some downward pressure from there, maybe that holds as resistance, and then we see this low get broken. So really you want to pay attention to if this move extends higher from this point, then we would be targeting the top side of that range, maybe even that gap at 195.50. But the overall scenario here is if we also just get some kind of, dud, some kind of lower high at this point, then it would be a very good likelihood that we are going to go make some kind of lower low at this point. Right now you have a low, you have a lower low, and you do have a high, but maybe we need to go make some kind of, lower high in order to start the downward pressure one more time. Back to the daily, just to show, I don't really have a good, right, I had some gray boxes down here on the other charts. Now, the purple zone is overall what I'm paying attention to. So I did mark off this level of 179.76 for some kind of bounce, maybe even that point there, because it looks like some good support. We actually could see that higher low setup in the overall grand scheme of things with the daily chart. But overall, I am really, really paying attention to the top of this purple zone. Our 50 is sitting around there. But if we do start to come down, you'll notice the 50 moving average, right? The 50-day moving average will be right around that 179.76 if we see a dramatic sell-off. And maybe that's actually where we do get some kind of bounce. But I just wanted to state the purple zone here is in so much confluence with all this liquidity. We've bought up from this zone so many times that it would not surprise me at all. So I would, I would really, at least for myself, be marking this 179.76 and be paying attention to this purple zone over the next couple weeks. You'll notice if that happens, it's very easy to see because we'll see this MACD come down, and then how you know we're going to see another leg is if we cross back on this MACD on the daily into positive territory. So I just wanted to state that last thing on Apple, and let's go into Amazon. Now, Amazon, this is a good sign, right? We're making a high, we're making another high, and yes, we did get an extreme pullback, but we're making a new high at this point, and that's a very good sign, and it's actually signaling to me that we might be getting some kind of higher low setup in the near future. Now, if we do point out the zone that I'm really paying attention to, the bottom of that zone is 126. Okay, right around 126, that would be right where this gap support starts. So I'm really paying attention to that. It's in confluence with this liquidity in here. We actually bounced from that zone in the past. We saw a huge gap up during the earnings from that area. So this area could be important. It could be where the buyers are lurking. Right now on the 30-minute for Amazon, I am paying attention to a possible double top. We could see this possible double top come into play. And we could see that happen because we do see that divergence between those 2 points. So we do see that divergence across here. Now, it's not the most significant of divergences, and we're actually seeing a bounce as of right now. So we are in positive territory. Maybe we do want to curl up one more time. So I really want to pay attention to that. See if we do curl up one more time, even break this little mini trend here, go a little bit higher. And what I'm going to pay attention to here is just that little divergence between the two. Because this is pretty close to that center line, I'm going to pay attention if that divergence is able to get us into negative territory on the 30-minute chart. Now on Amazon, you do have a low, right? You have a higher low on a 30-minute, you have a higher low on a 30-minute. So this is still in an upward trend. And until we take out one of these lows, then we can't really say that the negative trend has begun. And especially since the MACD is not going to be in negative territory. So we really need that to get to negative territory. We need to take out this low and start a downward trend at this point. I believe it's coming this week, but it just might take a little more time, right? This downward move might go on over the next 2 or 3 weeks, going into the important decision that's happening mid-December with the Fed. One of the only stocks that was able to be up 0.53%, okay? It was up 0.53%, while most of the market was down by a little bit on Friday. So we really want to pay attention to that. Right now, I was just pointing out some consolidation here, but we do have this gap right below us, and we could go fill that soon. If we look at the measured move of this continuation triangle, if it were to break to the downside, we would just point this out that we could go to lower levels. Where I think that we would possibly see those buyers step in is where they've stepped in recently, right? We saw them step in right around this area. We actually gapped above this area, so that's why I found it a little bit important. And then we bounced from that area one more time. So I'm really paying attention to this area. The bottom side of that is about 205.90. So I'm really paying attention to that, but this is a continuation structure at this point. And so we could see this actually play out to the upside, and it wouldn't be absurd for a couple stocks to go up while other stocks go down. And the reason that I'm just stating that Tesla actually could make another move higher is because if you look at the hourly here, the MACD looks like it's just about to cross. It's still in positive territory. So you would want to be paying attention to if it's able to break above this high right here. Maybe we actually did just use this as some consolidation, prices getting tight, and maybe we get some kind of explosive move for another retest. So that's really what I'm paying attention to in Tesla, to the bullish and bearish side. I'm really just waiting for this structure to give me some direction. Now, NVIDIA's been seeing some pain, and actually 2 days before all of this pain happened, we were saying this is where we're taking some money off the table, right? We're taking some money off the table. We're competing with this high at this point. We've seen some selling, but this is good news overall that we do go make a new high at this point. This is a high. Here's your higher high. And then maybe now we just need to make some kind of low or higher low at this point. Where I think that higher low could kind of come to fruition, I'm really paying attention to this 459.54 level, maybe for a potential small bounce or something like that. And then I'm really paying attention to this this little zone in here. That's kind of just a point where the bottom side of that's about 423. And I'm ending all of these zones on December 12th because we actually get CPI data on December 13th. And that could be something that actually turns around this market. And if we actually get a low reading in CPI, and we also get some kind of pivoting hinted in the future from the Fed in the mid-December, which I believe is December 15th, then we could see another leg higher in this bull run. Maybe we actually do curl over this week, and I do have the updated ranges on my Patreon for NVIDIA. This is why I was saying NVIDIA could be leading the market and giving us a little hint, is because not only is it in negative territory, but we're still pointing down at this point. Now, it doesn't mean we can't curl back up into positive territory, come test this high or even break above it. We would just want to be paying attention to that most recent trend and seeing if we set up another little divergence here. Okay, so we really want to pay attention to that on the hourly chart. But the fact that we are pointing downward and we're in that negative territory, we're almost to those oversold conditions. So we want to pay attention to that. That's kind of why I've marked out this 459.54 at this point. It just looks like a good support level where we could see a bounce if there's more downward pressure, but we are still pretty close to that center line. So if we do cross above that center line, you could see this trend continue maybe to test this high or even come touch the point between those two highs. And this is where I just wanted to stop and say something about the weekly ranges that I have posted on Patreon. They are pretty big in some stocks. I think Amazon has a little bit bigger range than usual. NVDA actually has a little bit bigger range, right? So NVIDIA does have a big range every week, but the last 2 weeks, NVIDIA's range has been significantly larger. So I really want to pay attention to that. It looks like big moves could happen in select stocks. And the fact that Amazon does have a bigger range this week after Black Friday, maybe that Black Friday news, if we do get some data on if people were shopping or not, could hint at some downward pressure early on in the week. Hey, maybe Amazon gets a green day because of that Cyber Monday, right? They're a huge Cyber Monday company, so we want to pay attention to that. And overall, these yields are starting to make a move higher, and you see that MACD down here is very close to crossing. So if this crosses and gets into positive territory, we can see a very strong move here. And if you've been paying attention to yields, you just know that when it makes a rapid move pretty quickly, I'm overall paying attention to this level of about 4.8, but when it makes that move quickly, that really hurts the tech stocks. And that's why I think we're seeing a little bit wider ranges on these tech stocks in the weekly ranges. We could see a rapid move in these yields very soon that could lead to some kind of downfall in the market. We are testing that previous high, so we were pointing that out in a couple week or a week or two ago. We were just saying it looks like we may go test this high or get some kind of head and shoulders. As of right now, you're making a lower low, right? You have this low, you're making a lower low, and maybe we're going to go set up some kind of lower high very soon. The reason I'm paying attention, and I think there may be a pop in these yields, is because the TLT trade, it's been getting really tight. TLT has been getting really tight, and we haven't really gotten a big move in TLT. So we want to pay attention to that. The overall zone that I'm paying attention to, the bottom side of that zone is right around that $85. It lines up with the top of this liquidity here and the bottom of this liquidity in here. So we do have a little zone in here where we could see some support. So that's overall what I'm paying attention to in TLT. And if I just go into an hourly chart here, you're going to see how close we are to going into that negative territory. The price action is still tight, and we are breaking this wedge to the downside at this point. So that could hint in the short term that we do want to head down. That doesn't mean we can't head a little lower, get some kind of retest, and then see that break down to lower levels. So we really want to pay attention to that. But you can see how close TLT is to that negative territory, and that's what we're paying attention to on a lot of stocks. Before we get into the recent action in the VIX, I do have this level of 1212 marked off, and that's just because this is an area where we've seen some extreme spikes, okay, in volatility. We've seen extreme spikes from this area over and over again. So if we do get some kind of upward pressure on Monday, it actually could hint to us, if we do go to that 1212, that there's some support there, and maybe that's where we start to see volatility creep back up. Recent readings of the VIX, right, we are seeing that we are getting very, very close to that 1212, where we have seen rapid, moves in the VIX. And this actually would be in confluence with some kind of retest. If we broke that area and touched that retest of this wedge that we broke out of, we actually could see a reaction from there. So I'm really paying attention to that level of 1212. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about on here, well, second to last thing, is this crash indication. If we do get some volatility in this market, and let's say the VIX just kind of goes nuts and gets above here, these two are very close at this point, and your crash indication is the 50 going above the 200. The thing about this is it needs to stay above the 200. Back if you go look at the VIX on a daily with your, your moving averages up, you're going to notice that once we did actually cross into or have the 50 cross the 200 back at the actual the top of this market, you're going to notice that the VIX was able to remain above the 200 for quite some time, and that's why we saw price action keep heading lower in a negative trend. So that's what we want to pay attention to. If this does remain up there, then maybe something else, and we're not going to create some kind of higher low at this point. But if this is able to pop above it and then cross back down, it's a very good indication that we do have another bull run coming. overall, this could just be some kind of retest, right? We could get some kind of retest, which actually lines up pretty well. You know, my drawing here lines up pretty well with the 12th, which is right before that CPI comes out. Maybe we do get some kind of reaction from there. So that's what we want to pay attention to in the VIX. And the only other thing I just wanted to point out, we see the VIX, you know, trailing lower and lower towards that point of 1212, but we actually see the VVIX holding up a little bit better. And actually the last 2 days, we actually have upward side. So we actually have the VVIX making this type of move, and the VIX is still trailing down. So we really want to pay attention to that. Overall, this indication just says, hey, there might be some volatility around the corner with some bad news. You see these Bollinger Bands starting to get tighter and tighter, so it's just something we need to pay attention to in the near future. So the main takeaway from this video is we're starting to see potential for that negative trend to begin, but we really have to be patient because we could see 1 or 2 more little curl ups early on in the week before that actually comes to fruition. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I actually worked all weekend to get my course finished. I just need to upload everything. So by tomorrow's video, you're going to actually see a link to that course, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right. I wish you guys all the luck in the world trading as of this whole week goes, and I hope you have a good night. Peace.